Church bells announced her wedding. Oliva woke beneath a rough blanket, tasting ether while grey light pressed through barred windows. The room smelled of damp oak, cold ashes, and somebody else's lavender soap. She crossed the board slowly, one hand dragging along the wall until it found an old church receiver. A priest's thin voice crackled through static and read unfamiliar names. Then he described her golden hair. Her fingers scraped loose green rust. Below, chairs scraped across stone, men tested a lock, and a wedding dress rustled inside paper. Through the bars, Dean's Folly spread around a sunken garden and a gate chained shut. No bride waited beside him as a black-coated clergyman walked towards the house. The black coat disappeared beneath the porch, and the bells stopped. Silence exposed every sound inside Dean's Folly. A key turning, glass touching wood, shoes climbing towards her. Oliva dropped the receiver and crouched beside a gap between the floorboards. Van Heerden's pale hand entered below, arranging a syringe, a ring, and folded bank papers on one table. Milsom asked, "Will the drug hold?" while crushing ash beneath his heel. "Long enough for yes," Van Heerden said, testing the needle. The papers named Oliva as an heiress whose husband would control half her fortune. Dust caught in her throat. The needle tapped the tabletop as she pressed her fist against her mouth, and footsteps reached the landing before a key scraped toward the lock. The scraping key entered, but Oliva had already returned to the bed. Van Heerden opened the door carrying water, his pointed beard neat above a courteous smile. His gaze counted the receiver, the window bars, and the mud beneath her bare foot. "The ceremony prevents something worse," he said, setting the glass beyond reach. Oliva kept her voice flat. "Whose ceremony?" The smile narrowed, and his thumb settled on the syringe case. Van Heerden placed the ring on her blanket like a counterpayment and said, "Say yes downstairs, and no needle returns." Her fingers trembled beneath the blanket, then closed around a loose brass bedpin. When he left, the untouched water shivered with the door's slam. The water kept trembling after Van Heerden's steps faded downstairs. Oliva bent the brass pin into a hook and worked it inside the service panel until metal clicked against metal. She lowered herself through a narrow lift shaft, knees scraping brick, while stale grease coated her palms. The shaft opened behind a pantry stacked with wedding cake, white flowers, and empty champagne glasses. Cold air spilled from the garden, and Oliva ran as a bell rang behind her. Her bare feet crossed gravel before Milsom's gloved hand caught the back of her dress. She drove the brass pin into his wrist and reached the chained gate. The chain held, but a torn blue ribbon slipped beneath it. The blue ribbon stopped against Beale's muddy boot outside the wall. He lifted it, saw fresh blood on the fabric, and looked toward the barred upper window. Beside him, Homo adjusted a white clerical collar that sat crooked under his black coat. "The doctor expects a false priest," Beale whispered. Homo's mouth pulled sideways. "Then disappointment deserves proper ceremony." They crossed the wall separately, Beale using an ash tree while Homo walked boldly through the front door. From the branches, Beale saw Oliva dragged across the sunken garden, her heels cutting twin lines through gravel. His grip whitened around the bark, but the organ covered no scream. Below, an unlocked coal window waited behind the flowers, and Beale dropped toward it as the organ started. The organ's first chord shook dust from the coal window onto Beale's shoulders. He crawled through darkness, followed a hot pipe, and rose behind the bars of Oliva's room. Oliva sat dressed in white, one sleeve torn, a fresh needle mark reddening her arm. Her eyes found Beale's, while iron cut their faces into separate squares. "Can speech still choose?" he asked, and she pinched the wound until pain sharpened her gaze. "For a minute," Oliva said. Beale held up the torn ribbon and said, "Marriage can block his claim." He placed a small key between the bars and opened his empty hand. "Afterward, every choice returns to Oliva," he said as her shaking fingers closed around the key. The key warmed inside Oliva's fist as Milsom marched her downstairs. A plank crossed the sunken garden, turning the barred threshold into a narrow altar. Homo stood midway above the trench, prayer book open, black coat lifting in the wind. Van Heerden watched from the warm doorway with Oliva's ring balanced on one finger. Beale took his place outside the bars, close enough for fingertips, not escape. Guests stood in a careful half-circle, leaving the escape path blocked. "State the bride's consent," Homo said, and Oliva's jaw worked before sound came. Milsom squeezed her bruised arm, but she pulled free and faced the prayer book. Oliva said, "Yes, by choice." The garden held its breath. Homo began the vows while the drug blurred the edges of every white flower. The vows moved over the trench while wind worried every white flower. Beale answered first, voice steady, palms open where Oliva could see them. Oliva repeated each phrase through dry lips, keeping the hidden key against her pulse. Homo wrapped the prayer book's ribbon around their joined hands, though iron still divided them. The final word faded, and even the organ fell silent. Milsom leaned closer, studied Homo's crooked collar, and burst into laughter. "That fraud was thrown from the church," Milsom said as Van Heerden reached for the ring. Homo laid an unrevoked license across the prayer book and said, "Suspended from comfort, never from holy orders." The paper's seal caught the light. The seal flashed once, bright as a blade, and Milsom's laughter broke apart. The fake priest had made a real marriage. Nobody moved beneath the bells. Van Heerden crossed the room and snatched for the license, but Oliva turned the small key, and the barred gate sprang open between them. He raised the syringe. The bride was drugged. Her answer means nothing. Oliva stepped past Beale before he could shield her. She held Van Heerden's gaze and spoke without trembling. "The answer remains yes." Van Heerden looked from the lawful signature to Beale, and the color thinned beneath his eyes. Half the fortune had crossed beyond his reach, and his fingers opened. Milsom backed away from him, suddenly unwilling to share a ruined plan. Outside, the wind slammed the chained gate wide. The open gate let dawn pour across the garden, but Oliva stopped beneath its arch. Behind her, police took Van Heerden's syringe while Milsom lowered his hands and Homo guarded the license. Beale approached without touching her. The torn blue ribbon looped around his fingers. "The marriage can be ended," he said while Oliva studied the ribbon and bruises circling her wrist. Another decision made during rescue. Beale flinched and set the license on the stone between them. "No claim, no debt, only choice," Beale said, stepping back far enough to clear the road. Oliva removed the ring, weighed it in her palm, and slipped it into her own pocket. Her shoulders lowered for the first time as clean morning air touched the needle mark. She walked through the gate alone. The same road brought Beale back 3 quiet mornings later, Oliva waited beside an open window, fully dressed, with the ring and unsigned annulment papers on the table. Sunlight warmed the paper, while Beale remained near the door and said, "A lawyer can collect those today." Oliva slid the papers toward him, and his jaw tightened before he opened them. Across the first page, one handwritten word waited. "Wait." Beale silently read it twice. "No promise follows that word," Oliva said, touching the ring. "None," Beale answered, and left both hands open. She placed the ring on her finger herself. His breath left in a soft laugh, but he did not cross the space until she held out her hand. Outside, the gate stood open, and Oliva no longer needed to run.